Alright, what's up YouTube? This is your boy Alex. It is in the middle of the late afternoon. Normally I film a YouTube video when it's about 1 or 2 o'clock, but time passes by when you're not paying attention to stuff. Now this is going to be another episode of Sex Game. I got like at least 2 to 3 videos to finish out the month of December. Excuse me, had lunch earlier, and then we're going to approach January 2021. Yeah, I know how I look on camera because it's time for a haircut, but unfortunately I gotta wait a lot longer for a haircut. Every time we get to a good point, this happens. Alright, that's not why you're here for some entertainment, and I'm here to give you men and women some entertainment. Now, this video right here is gender neutral. It took me a while to put this list together. Now, try not to get upset because I have a second half to this video that's going to be in the category of television. And I don't know if this video is going to be any good when I upload, so please forgive me. It's not exactly easy to put this list together. I have another video, but that's going to be a combination of sports and music, and I don't know how that's going to fit together because I have to write that list out again to see if it come out right. This one is the accomplishments of film producers. Now, some people in Hollywood happen to be screenwriters, film directors, and producers, but today we're going to try to acknowledge the accomplishments of film producers in film of Hollywood filmmaking. So we're probably going to call this title Sex Game, the best film producers and writers of filmmaking. So you got some screenwriters, and I already made one about screenwriters, but there are some people who deserve some respect and some credit. The film producers always put their money into pet projects in television and film, right? Today we're taking care of the film side of business, the film aspect of it. Maybe in the future of 2021, I actually make a video about the business aspect of financing and more of that side of it. This is the film producers, because even though if you have a screenwriter, a film director, an executive producer, you still need a film producer. Someone to oversee the control of when you're doing a movie or a television show. So the title of this video is going to be called Sex Game, the best film producers and writers of filmmaking, part 1. And it's for women and for men. It's for both. Coming in at number 10 is Michael Bay. Now, we all know who Michael Bay is. He is a film producer and a film director. Now, I've heard some people say Michael Bay is better at producing movies and television shows than he is at film directing. Me, personally, I'm going to say he's good at both. He gets a lot of respect and credit when it comes to being a film director. He's done a lot of big budget Hollywood movies, and not too many people in Hollywood is going to take their own money and create their own sets for their movies. Like Transformers, a lot of the high-tech technology, CGI, a lot of that he took his money and put into those Transformer movies. So when people be bashing those Transformer movies, keep in mind, he produced the movie, he wrote the movie, he directed the movie, he puts his heart and soul into these movies. Now, is it his best work? Probably not. But he did Bad Boys 2. He was credited with being executive producer, if not film producer, of Bad Boys 3, and there will be a Bad Boys 4. And he's done movies like Pearl Harbor, I think. I'll have to double check. Yeah, Pearl Harbor was a good movie. And he done the Transformer movies. Michael Bay has his moments when he's genius as a film director. But as a film producer, he's equally good. Like, he's good at spotting what set designs he wants, what colors, whether he wants the location to be in the studio, a green room, or out on location, or film multiple locations. Michael Bay's very good when it comes to that. He knows exactly what he wants. Even when he started directing music videos in the late 80s, early 90s, he made the transition from doing music videos to doing television to doing film to producing. So if he can direct, he can produce. If he can produce, he can direct. It's just unfortunate no one looks at his skill set as a film producer than as a director. We all know him as a director, but what about as a producer? He does take some of his money and he does put some of his money into his own projects, and they become successful, and then he makes $250 million at the box office because of his critic success of being a film producer and a film director. See, we only know him as a director, but what about as a film producer? So it's just unfortunate he doesn't get enough respect and credit when it comes to that. Now, should Michael Bay be higher, much higher on the list? He should be, but there's a lot of competition on this list. Coming in at number 9 is George Clooney. A lot of people do not give him his judge due. This guy's good and great at everything. We know him as an actor. We know he's a director. We know he does screenwriting, but I did not know he was a producer. And he's good at everything. He studied his craft. He's somebody that did a TV show called ER. And then this guy became big time with movies like Dusk Till Dawn, Ocean's 11, 12, and 13, Michael Clayton. Those are just some of his big blockbuster films. And then to turn around and direct a movie, to produce, write, and direct a movie, and then not to get an Oscar for it, it's a tragedy. And for him to be in Hollywood for 3 decades and producing, writing, and directing and acting in movies, it's hard to do all of that. And he knows what he wants. There's this one movie that he directed where he actually made actors like Julius Roberts get paid $20. Like, a lot of people think it's funny. It wasn't funny when George Clooney said, you're going to do this movie and you're only going to be paid $20. And what I learned about him doing that is that if you want to be successful in this business of filmmaking, sometimes you gotta do something to make a leap forward and be taken serious. And George Clooney shows you what a real legitimate businessman does, not just when it comes to acting, but when it comes to the business side of it. A lot of people don't understand the business aspect of television and film. They don't understand what producers and executive producers experience and go through. Cutting costs, cutting budget, taking stuff out of movies and television shows, putting stuff in movies and television shows. See, a director can direct a movie or a television show or a feature-length film, but a producer makes those decisions on what gets cut, what stays in. Now, the director might have some say on what stays in the movie, what's the final project, but if a producer says, I'm paying $15,000, $20,000 or $15-20 million for something to be added or taken out of the movie, and it's my money, what's a director going to do? A director has control of its budget, but the producer pays the director to use the studios or the location to film the movie or the television show. Now, the director works exclusively with the producer. The producer and the director be the ones that you have to impress when you go to these auditions for movies and television shows. They know who they want in their movies and television shows and who they don't. That's part of the business. If you're not trying to get into the business, then the first person that's going to tell you, why you're here is a film producer. The director might like you in the movies and television shows. A lot of times the producer is a little different because the producer gets to be picky about particularly who I want in my movies. And some actors, after they've been in the business for 15, 20, or 25 years, they get their own production company and they're able to get whoever they want in their movies and television shows. And when they have to take their money out of their own pocket and finance a movie as a pet project, you have no idea what they go through. They go through cutting costs, tightening the budget. Sometimes they have to film on multiple locations. And sometimes it could take a year, 2 or 3 years for a movie to be finished. And then they might have to make a sequel if the movie's really good. And a lot of times that's why the directors be telling you they don't know if they're going to make a sequel or sequels. Because if the movie ain't that good, then the producer's not going to want a sequel of a movie, because directors are like this. They'll make as many movies as they want if they're green lighted. But if a producer says, we're not going to give you the green light for something, then the director has to follow those rules. And George Clooney kind of seems to have the balance of both. He knows the business aspect as well as the cost of budget. Like, these movies ain't for cheap. When you be watching these Avenger movies, these superhero movies, Transformers, those movies don't be for cheap. Like, those movies be costing in the billions of dollars. And what producers and executive producers experience is that sometimes they can't even they can't even get half that money back from the box office, and that'd be frustrating because I'd have gave you like $250,000, and it's supposed to be guaranteed I get 250 million for a movie, and that's just 250 million. There are some movies that make much more than that. I'm just telling you what executive producer. Now, on the other hand, George Clooney is a good screenwriter. He writes scripts just as well as he directs. He directs as well as he writes. He acts, but he also is good as a producer. And again, it's unfortunate we don't see the accomplishment in his producing skills. Number 8 is going to be my man Will Smith. Now, he is a triple powerhouse. This guy can rap, sing, act in television and film, produce music, and then be a producer in movies. And it's just unfortunate that in 20 plus years, nobody has really took notice to that. Like they know Will Smith for his movies and television shows. They know he's a songwriter. They know he produces music, but he also produced movies and television shows too. Like you look at T.I.'s movie, right? ATL, right? Well, Will Smith produced that movie because nobody really wanted to come in and put up the money for that. And Will Smith saw that T.I. was passionate about that movie, and that book, it was a book and it was a movie. And then years later, they would want to make a TV show called Atlanta, which kind of hints at that movie. There are two different concept stories to it, but my point is, Will Smith is a good producer, and a lot of times he attached himself to big budget movies like Men in Black, Independence Day, Bad Boys. He comes on as a producer, and not only did he make money as an actor, he making money as an artist and then as a producer. So he ain't coming in with one check, he coming in with 3 or 4 paychecks. And Will Smith knows what producers go through with experiencing production cost, and he has an idea on how that's handled. Coming in at number 7 is my man Quentin Tarantino. I like me some Pulp Fiction, Reservoir Dogs. Those are some classical Quentin Tarantino's films. Not just Bill Kill Volume 1 and 2. There's Jackie Brown. There's Django. Those are all good critical films. And he do stuff conventional in his movies that today you would get in trouble by a big major studios. Like the stuff that you see him put in those movies, he is allowed to do that because he takes his own money and he finances. When you can finance your own set designs for movies, you can pretty much do whatever you want. Now, if you work for a studio, you have to abide by the studio contract rules. This is what a lot of directors be getting into arguments with producers about, because it's the cost, and the cost adds up. So if a movie bombs at the box office hard, but you got this good design to a movie, well, then people are going to be looking like, where did all that money go to? And Quentin Tarantino kind of understands that when he does movies like Pulp Fiction, Jackie Brown, Bill Kill Volume 1 and 2, he understands those movies can cost a lot of money, and he knows how to write, produce, and that's the good thing about his writing skills. He knows how to express his self-creativity in these movies. But at the same time, he's a good producer because he makes sure he negotiates the best deal for himself and for everyone else. And he understands business. He understands filmmaking. He understands that if you can understand the business aspect, you make more money, not just filmmaking. He's not just a guy that comes in and does movies. He figures out what needs to get done. So when all the business side has been concluded, he goes and puts on the magic camera and creates some magic on film, and you see the best movies that he directs. This is why people want to be where he's at, because he can control the rights of his movies. You see, most people don't understand that when you get into this business, you figure it out, you're gonna be on the right track of success. Coming in at number 6 is Margot Robbie. Sorry if I butcher her name. This woman's from Australia, but we all know her as Harley Quinn from Suicide Squad and the movie Birds of Prey. Now, she has her own production company, and a lot of people didn't realize that. Like, her start in Hollywood was different from everyone else's because she auditioned for movies and television shows, and she got into small parts in movies and TV shows. But when she started producing movies, and big name actors and actresses were popping up in her movies that got her recognized. And for her to be at her age and have her own production company is very rare. Because normally you would have to do this for 15, 20 years and then get to that level where you can have your own production. And she wanted to understand how you cut costs and make movies work with a limited budget. So she's good at doing that side of the business as well as being a good actress. So somewhere in her future, don't be surprised that she'll start writing and directing. But her producing skills are credited because that's what got her into movies. She was already making money as a producer, and all of a sudden someone said, what about acting? And she took acting. Now you can kind of say that now she's good at doing both. The next thing she's probably going to do is write and direct. That's the next thing coming up. All right, coming in at number 5 is my man, Robert Rodriguez. You cannot have a list without including him. This guy's got the Monterey Network. This embodies what being a producer / writer is. Like, this guy could be writing for sports television networks, and this guy took his passion for filmmaking. We all know the story. It was 25 years ago. He donated his body for research and got some money and did El Amanche, and then turned around and then the studios wanted a sequel, and that sequel was a feature film called Desperado, which led to another sequel called Once Upon a Time in Mexico. There's the Spy Kid movies. There's Machete. You know, those are all his big movie franchise films, big blockbuster films. He produces, he writes, he directs, he eds, and he sometimes acts in his own movies. And the fact that he's really well known as a producer is incredible. Yeah, we know him as a director, but he's more known as a producer than a director. He just happens to be good at both producing, writing, and when he writes his movies out, he's able to make stuff fit in movies where if I wrote a script and try to make it fit the way I wrote it, it wouldn't come out right. When he does it, he visualizes on what he wants and it gets into the movie. And then if there's an idea for something else, he'll write again and at the last minute squeeze it into a movie, and you'll never notice what was added or taken out of the movies because that's how good he writes. When he produces, he cuts the cost of all of his movies. So they look like they're big budget movies, and they are big budget movies, but you can't tell because he hasn't lost any money while budgeting for those movies. He gets around cutting cost, where other studios, you know, take these huge gambles. He's saving money, and he created his own network, Monterey Network. Now, to do that, you got to be very good at business. You got to be very good at understanding your audience, how to translate your audience from the big screen to the small screen and being just as successful. And the only way you can do that is to be like a television producer. So he's even figured out the television aspect as well as on the big screen. Usually producers, if they're in television, usually they stay on one side. He's doing both sides. And to his credit, he has his own network where you're watching the movies that he directs as well as movies from the past. So he's kind of like revolutionized film for what it'll be in the future. Coming in at number 4 is my man George Lucas. You got to have George Lucas on here. This is a legend. This is an icon. This guy writes, he directs, but he's also producer. Now, what makes George Lucas the producer interesting is that every time he does a movie like Star Wars, people is going to know who he is. And to me, George Lucas is a guy that is gonna go much further. You know, movies, television, books, video games, because his name's on this stuff. And when he comes on credited as a producer, he gives his insight. He gives his knowledge on what future filmmaking should be going to. And he emphasizes that. And the only way you can do it is if you're a producer writer. Now, some people don't give him respect and credit for writing out the Star Wars movies. We know about the prequels. He did produce, write, and direct those prequels. He put his heart and soul into that. Those were his projects. And to his credit, people know who he is. Coming in at number 3 is Steven Spielberg. Now, this is one of my favorites. Top favorites. Now, Steven Spielberg is a guy that is good with producing movies. When you talk about best produced films, Steven Spielberg can produce. You know, Jurassic Park, the original trilogy, Jaws, the second Jaws movie, and then of course all those war epic movies like Saving Private Ryan. That's where I think he hit it real big as a producer, is Saving Private Ryan, because in that movie he solidified himself as a big time producer, and then to be credited as executive producer of all those Transformer films, and to be in that branch with Michael Bay and bring him up to the same level, and then to have it solidify him that not only that he's good as a writer and as a director, he's good as a producer and an executive producer. Now, as a writer, he knows how to tell stories to grab your interest. Like war movies, like Saving Private Ryan, that's by far one of his best films, because it isn't just talking about war, it's talking about psychological war inside your mind, and he's able to figure out how to bring that out into a movie. And Tom Hanks was so huge in that movie that it was credited to coming on as a producer, and you could see years later it's just he makes people around him better. That's why I like Steven Spielberg. He don't just come off as one of these directors that say, all right, let's get to work, people. He's one of those, I want to get to know my my actors and my actresses on and off the set, and this is how come he makes some of the best movies. All right, coming in at number 2 is Tyler Perry. You gotta have Tyler Perry on this list. It would be a shame not to include him on this list. For him to come from where he was to where he is today, and to produce, write, and direct. And producing is where he's strong at. I don't know any producer that can produce movies, television shows simultaneously. Every time a Tyler Perry movie come out, a new Tyler Perry television show come out. Every time a Tyler Perry show come out, a Tyler Perry movie drop. And then they drop 2 or 3 television shows and 2 to 3 movies in 1 year. Who do you know works that hard? And the guy is budgeting his money to the point where he's getting actors and actresses to come on board and serve as actors and actresses, and then giving them executive roles, not just in their movies, in his movies. And to do that, you got to be a very skilled person to pull that off. Most people can't do what he do, to drop 3 movies, 3 television shows, and then turn around and do a theater play and then produce the theater play. So this man's got some mad skills. And if you hang around Tyler Perry, he's a working guy. All he does is work. You will not catch this guy doing nothing else but producing, writing, and directing movies and television shows. And people learn from his knowledge, and they get good at it. And they can enhance their careers. Coming in at number 1 is Patty Jenkins. You should know who she is by now. She's a producer and a director, and she made the movie happen. Wonder Woman, and now we're getting the sequel to Wonder Woman 1984. Well, guess what? People take this woman serious. Like, when she has something to say, studios listen to her when she has something to say. Everyone else gets ignored in the room, and when Patty Jenkins come in there, if there's an idea she wants to express in the movie, it gets done. And if the studio don't cover the cost, she'll take her own money and cover the cost. So that way the studios win, she wins, her actress wins. She don't just negotiate for herself, she negotiate for her actress. So you got to see where this is going. Now, this was to collaborate producers and screenwriters. Now, Patty Jenkins can write. That's another one of her talents. Now, she's a producer and a director, but she can write. Like, some of those ideas that you see in the movie where people be laughing at certain jokes, Patty Jenkins put her genius brilliance into that story. And she's good at figuring out characters. She's good at figuring out actors and actresses' strong points. And as a producer, she knows how to build the set that she wants to fit those stories. And most people never get to do that unless you have the money for it. So these were the best film producers / writers of filmmaking, part 1. Part 2, we're going to do the television aspect. But first, I want to see how well received this video is. Until next time, peace.